What's up guys, this is John with Carrot Customs, and today we're going to be showing you the install video for our long travel rear suspension kit. We're going to be installing our long travel rear leaf spring setup, and we're also going to be doing our long travel rear shock mount kit, which replaces your factory shock mounts up here and your factory shock mounts on the axle. And it's kind of a universal deal so that you can use essentially whichever shocks you want to use, like on a higher end side. And so in this case, you'll see JP brought us a set of triple bypasses from Fox that are super sweet. So those will be really fun to fit in. And if you were just doing our rear suspension upgrade, you could essentially leave the drive shaft attached. You wouldn't have to take the entire axle out like we're doing, but this axle needs some attention. So while we're in there, it's just gonna come out and get some fresh bearings and all that good stuff. So there's a few things to note here. Got the factory shocks out, and now it's time to get the rest of this disconnected. So a side note on these, one of the things we have to disconnect is our speed sensor. We gotta disconnect that. We're gonna disconnect this soft brake line right here because it's getting replaced with a longer one. And we're gonna disconnect the breather tube and the two emergency brake cables. So with the emergency brake released, sometimes I think you have to pull on the release handle and then pull the cable as well to get it out. Sometimes you don't, but the easiest way to get this thing out is to just give it a pull, and it essentially unspools the ratchet in the pedal in the cab and gives you enough room to get this out. Super simple, no need to fight with it. You know, those are the things that if you know the tips and tricks really make your life easier, because trying to get e-brake cables that are exactly the right length connected is quite tricky. So real easy. You can see here, this bracket, this e-brake cable bracket is gonna get replaced. This bracket's gonna get replaced, and the rear hanger and shackle bracket is all gonna get replaced. So we're gonna pull the cables out of here and then take all this off, and you'll see when we put the new stuff on. So we will get started with that.
All right, now that you've got the U-bolts off and the leaves are free from the axle, next step is to get the leaves out of the way. In our case, this truck's got a service box on it, so this front bolt is gonna be a complete pain in the butt. We can't get our big 1/2-inch impact on it. So I think what we're actually gonna do is just buzz the rivets off, which we're gonna have to do anyways, and take it off all in one piece. The back, we've got room, so we'll show you just undoing the bolt on the hanger and then getting out of the way. We'll give you a bit more room to buzz the rivets off that rear hanger. All right guys, so for the rear leaf spring swap, we're gonna be getting rid of both of these hangers. So that means getting rid of 3 rivets on this side, another 3 on that, and then also the stock bracket for the parking brake cable will come off, and we'll get a replacement on our new set. So all that comes off. On the rear, there's just 4 more rivets for the hanger, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. Our favorite method in the shop to get rid of these is a sharp chisel on the air hammer. and you can buzz them right off and then just pop them through the frame. If you don't have an air hammer, another method is just a sanding disc, a flap disc on a angle grinder, and you can grind them down and punch them through. Just takes a little more time and you can kind of buzz through discs, so we prefer the air hammer. And then for those that are going with the long travel shock mount as well, we'll get these 3 rivets that hold the stock shock mounts onto the frame. We'll buzz those guys off too. All right, you guys, we've got all the original leaf spring hangers out of the way. We buzzed the 3 rivets off of that one, the 4 off the back one. Now all that's left is this little tab sticking out from underneath the frame. You can just use a cutoff wheel and punch it out like similar to the rivets we did over here. I'm gonna just use a sharp chisel on the air hammer, bust it off, and then just pop it right through. All right, guys, first step for us on the axle side of things is gonna be cutting off the old shock mounts that are welded onto the axle tube. For anyone who's just doing the rear leaf spring swap and not doing the extended shock mount, this is not required. You can still utilize these with some stock shocks, but for us, we're installing the long travel shock kit at the same time, so we're gonna go ahead and buzz these off. All right, guys, last step on the axle side of things before we can start bolting everything back up in the truck is drilling out the spring perches. You can use a 3/4 inch drill bit if you want. In my experience, we just end up burning right through them. So I kind of elected to go with the die grinder. A lot easier. Just make sure you get it 3/4 all the way to the bottom. You can use the drill bit just to confirm that it's 3/4 inch all the way to the bottom. That way you want those leaf springs to sit all the way flat on the perch. All right, we've got the spring perches all drilled out to 3/4, and then we're gonna take our spring top plate and drill this center guy out to 7/8. Okay, you guys, we went ahead and took the time to clean up the frame and paint it, but next step for you is gonna be front hanger. You can see these are where those old rivets are that we popped out. We're actually gonna utilize the 3 front holes for our new hanger. So that'll make it nice and easy to line up. Throw a couple in there to hold it. Couple nuts on the back of those. Okay, so we got it mounted up there. I just want to note that we've got 2 on this side, but also we've got the bottom guy, so we know it's nice and snug against the bottom of the frame. Next step is just, I'm going to take a scribe, and on this freshly painted frame, I can just scribe these 3 holes in, and then pull the bracket back off, and get to drilling. All right, we got the bracket back off, and you can see we've got 3 nice circles from that scribe that we can go after. Now we'll just drill 3 1/2-inch holes through the frame. On the driver's side, you gotta be careful because we've got brake lines, fuel lines, your wiring harness, everything runs down this side of the frame. You can kind of see back here, we've got a piece of metal just in between all those lines, all the wires and everything in the frame. That way when we drill through, we won't just puncture straight into a line. We'll be hitting this scrap metal first. So before you mount this up onto the frame permanently, we got to remember to drill a couple of holes for the park and brake cable holder. So I'm just going to center it on the bracket. I'm using a 5/16 drill bit, and I'm just going to mark the 2 holes and then get the bracket out of the way and finish them out. I'm just going to be using, going to be drilling through where our little logo is stamped. That just happens to be where this thing needs to sit. So kind of a bummer we're going to be messing with that, but it is what it is. All right, you guys, we've got the 2 holes drilled, so we'll just mount it facing this direction and using the included M8 hardware. We'll run it in there. All right, now that we've got the park and brake bracket on there, we can go ahead and mount this for the final time. All right, you guys, we got the front bracket mounted. Now it's to the rear. There's 4 holes that are all there for us. Only thing we got to do is open them up with that 1/2" drill bit again, and then we're good to go. You'll see there's 1 pinch weld that'll rub right against the top of this rear bracket. What we do is we just take an angle grinder, cut a couple lines through that pinch weld, and pound it flat. The other thing you might find is that your bed mount will rub against the back of this bracket. That usually means that your bed is just not centered on the frame. So all you got to do is loosen those 6 bed bolts and center it. Then it'll be a flush, but it'll clear on both sides. Okay guys, time to hang the leaf springs. I recommend getting a buddy to help you with this because these suckers are heavy. Just to note, the military wrap is on the front of the leaf spring. There should be a little sticker that indicates front on them so you can't mess them up. But yeah, let's get to it. We've got them all bolted up. I was just gonna let you guys know, for just a standard length truck, if you don't wanna change up your wheelbase at all, we use the rearward hole. If you wanted to play with your wheelbase at all, you've got options. But if you're just keeping it stock, rear is your guy. All right, for everyone doing the long travel rear shock mount install, this is for you. The shock tube itself, the 2 frame plates, the ends that will weld onto either end of the shock tube to mount onto those frame plates. We've got 4 of the axle side shock mounts that we'll be welding on there. And then the 4 shock mounts that slide over the shock tube itself. So I took one of our frame plates and bolted it to the passenger side, and then also bolted the end that we're gonna weld onto the end of the shock tube, bolted it up. Next step, we'll run the actual tube across and over the frame. And as I'm running it through between the frames, I'll take all 4 of these shock mounts and run them on there one by one. And then I'm just gonna get this end and fish it onto that side frame plate that we already have bolted on. Tight squeeze.
So this is a universal shock mount kit, so not every install is going to be the same. This one is particularly easier because, well, it's easier, one, because it has the service bed and there's a lot more room in between. And then two, it is a little more difficult due to the wheelbase. So right now, the main things to consider when we put these on is you want the shock far enough away from the frame so that when it cycles, it doesn't come up and rub in here. And you want to make sure that you have enough angle to where your bypass tubes, your reservoir, or other things like that don't come down at full, or they don't come down, but at full compression, they don't interfere or crash into the axle housing. So we've got that figured out. One thing to consider is as it travels, the axle is actually going to move back as it compresses, so that helps give a little extra room. And then once we get this side tacked up, we'll take measurements from this side and make it the same over there, because this side's the one with the most clearance issues due to the gas tank. And then we'll be good to go.
So we got everything mocked up in place. We tacked all the tabs in place and then cycled it just to make sure everything cleared. And it looks like we're good. The reservoirs and the adjusters on the back of this are going to clear the axle tube at full bump. So we're happy. Now we're going to take the shocks back off and then pull the tube out from above the frame. On a stock bed truck, you're probably going to have to pick the bed up just to clear the tabs for the shock tabs. On this one, we've got a service body with loads of room, so we won't have to. We're lucky in that case, but yeah, let's get started pulling these guys off. All right guys, now that everything's finished welded and we've got it painted, we're gonna start reinstalling it. So I'm gonna take the passenger side frame plate and bolt it on first.
Hope you guys enjoyed this install video. I know it's long and detailed, but it's what people have been asking for. Don't forget to bleed your brakes, check all your fluids, check and make sure you torqued all the bolts and you're all good to go. And then it's time to go out and have some fun.